So, I'm standing here before you today to make the case that one of the most fundamental characteristics that defines us as human beings is our impulse to tell stories to one another. And this is something we know even as small children. We know it intuitively. It's encoded in our shared cultural DNA, and we know these beats even today. We delight in the grammar and the syntax and the musicality of a well-told tale. Once upon a time, happily ever after, too hot, too cold, just right. I'll huff, I'll puff, I'll blow your house down. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. I could go on. I'm not going to, but hopefully you get the point. Even when we're very young, we eagerly anticipate these elements showing up in the stories that are told to us, and we even go on to insert them into our own stories later on when we go to tell them. It's because of this shared cultural DNA of stories that it makes them engaging, creative, and efficient ways of conveying complex information to one another, whether that's bare bones facts or whether that's social customs or moral codes or information about our historical roots, who we are, where we came from. Story is how we mark time. It's how we imbue time with significance and meaning, because otherwise we're just all alone on this little blue marble, hurtling through space, making our way towards the eventual heat death of the universe, and that is way too depressing a thought to think about. I don't even know why I brought it up. Why did I bring it up? So we tell stories to pass the time. And when we tell tales about how our grandfather once was swimming off the coast of Tybee Island and this bull shark was approaching and he punched him in the nose and it swam away, or how a couple of weeks ago during Sunday service our toddler dropped an F-bomb right in the middle of it in front of God and everybody. Stories are doing important work. They're maintaining social cohesion by entertaining and by educating and by inspiring. And so it's this interest in storytelling that drew me to the project I'm here to talk about with you today. It's called the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives, or if you're in the house, we call it the DALN. And if you're familiar with initiatives like StoryCorps, or NPR's This I Believe, or Ira Glass's Chicago Project, or any of a number of other national oral history collection projects, then you probably have a good general idea of what the DALN is. But more specifically, it's an online, publicly accessible collection of, at this moment, around 7,500 individual submissions. All of them are stories. Stories about how people learn to read or write or otherwise figure out the complex codes and rules that structure our lives as students, as musicians, as gamers, as specialized laborers, as people of color, or particular sexual identities. Each one of those stories represents a person who is sharing, potentially with the entire world, an important moment about their learning experiences. So, a little background about the DALN. It's around 10 years old, and it started even a little before that when we had conversations and development and planning, primarily on the OSU campus in the English department. And this was led by Professors Cynthia Self and Louis Ullman. And once we started talking and were serious about getting this project started, we reached out to our colleagues at other institutions across the nation, including Georgia State, University of Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan. I assure you that the people at these institutions are fine, upstanding people. And from that, we started off with a very specific and I think a modest goal. We want to just collect stories from the people, the general public, and figure out what their attitudes and beliefs were concerning literacy. And then go on to use that to refine our teaching and whatnot. But it's grown considerably since then. The DALN is what I like to call a beautiful, wonderful mess of stories. And those stories come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They come in different formats, one-on-one interviews, or people that just sit down in front of a webcam and just extemporaneously go, or things that are more rehearsed and polished. We take a variety of file formats, so there are written narratives in a variety of text formats. There are document scans, video files, audio files. They take the form of different genres. Storytellers position themselves as heroes, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, or they're victims whose attitudes have been shaped by the traumas they've experienced, or they're rebels who just flout the rules and do whatever the heck they want. It has global reach. People who have submitted to the site come from 6 of 7 continents. We're still trying to get one from Antarctica. And I'm not joking. I've got somebody on that, and she knows a guy who knows a guy who, I guess, lives in Antarctica. Each of these submissions is accompanied by a bunch of metadata, information like relevant keywords, or the time during which these stories occurred, or relevant state or geographical region or a country, or any additional languages. And that metadata is really valuable for us when we kind of do some data analytics. These stories represent a cross-section of the population, young and old, blue-collar, professional, regular people just like us, and then people that breathe that rarefied air like Olympic athletes and novelists, and even one former president. But like I said, the DALN is a beautiful, wonderful mess of stories. So when we started this, we knew how people would use it, and primarily it gets used in the classroom. Teachers in high school and college level classes, mostly, they use it by having their students model the contents they find on the DALN. So they're probably directed to go look for narratives about particular topics and then study them and then create their own narratives and consider uploading those to the site as well. And then in addition to that, a growing body of scholarship has emerged around this project. So this takes the form of things like articles in academic journals or edited collections and an ever-growing number of conference presentations. So all of that activity basically reflects what we anticipated from the outset. But if you ask me, what's really interesting are the emergent uses to which people have put the DALN. And primarily this takes the form of community outreach and engagement initiatives. Projects where we reach out with community partners and we go out into communities and do collection events and hopefully run away from that experience with narratives that are mutually beneficial for all parties. So just to give you some examples, close to home here in Columbus, we go into neighborhoods like Linden or the Hilltop, communities that are economically disadvantaged but absolutely rich in terms of history and culture. People tell us stories about how the local barber shop or the church functions as informal sites of literacy instruction and community activism. So that's pretty awesome. An ongoing project we have is called the Literacy Narratives of Black Columbus. And designated OSU English classes partner up with community leaders, and we go and we collect narratives from people like black business owners or black artists. And another example we have is we collect a growing number of narratives from deaf and hard of hearing persons who talk about navigating the tricky line between mainstream culture and deaf culture. But in each of these cases, the same thing is going on. These are communities that typically have been underrepresented. Their voices and their images have not circulated in mainstream culture as widely as they might have. And so what the DALN has done in this case is kind of given them a platform where they can preserve an alternative history. And so it gives that community a voice and hopefully helps them galvanize a little more strongly in the process. Here's what I've come to know by working with the DALN. And I've been with it since the beginning. Set aside whatever we're learning about literacy, which is important, but let's just set it aside. We also learn a lot about the human condition in general. Think about that shared cultural DNA in the stories that connect us. In these cases, we have common experiences, common languages, common expressions, common values and beliefs that tie us together. And in particular, when it comes to literacy, these constitute some of the most enduring and precious and persistent memories that we all have and hold near and dear to our hearts. And I'm looking across the crowd, and I'm guaranteeing you that you're all thinking of one, or maybe more than one. Because we all know these stories, right? Stories about the first time we wrote our name in cursive. I think I was in second grade. Stories about having our parents read bedtime stories to us when we were children. Stories about how when we got a little older, the first time we read a story back to them, how proud we were. Stories about hopping on pop, or the moral dilemma of whether or not you should eat green eggs and ham, or that story about learning that brick makes a far more durable construction material than straw or sticks. Did I spoil that for you? I'm sorry. It's still worth reading. Stories about the first time you cracked open that Nintendo Entertainment System and you spent hours learning the play patterns and the cheat codes, and you finally beat Super Mario Brothers. It was a hard game. Stories about spending evenings with your friends at the Somali Community Center learning English. Stories about teaching Bible study class in the local prison. This is why we're involved with this project. These stories give us so much information about what motivates us, what gives us hope, what gives us drive. Also, it gives us information about what causes us dread and anxiety, frustration, who helps us, who hinders us along the way, the coping strategies we develop that'll let us overcome obstacles and ultimately recognize some measure of success. Like, take all that together, and it's a fundamental, simple, but really powerful idea is that all these stories tell us ultimately that in this journey through life, hurtling on that blue marble, we are not alone. And this is a story that I can personally attest to. I've seen it myself. Last year I taught a class that used the DALN. I had a student enrolled in it who had been diagnosed with autism. And when she started her final research project, I remember her coming up to me, and she was excited about seeing that there were several narratives on the site that dealt with learning disabilities, where the people talked about the challenges they faced, working with their disability in the context of a regimented and standardized educational system. And that same term, I had another student. She was bilingual. She still lived with her parents who did not speak English, so she served as kind of their conduit or their translator to the outside world. She paid the bills, she answered the door, answered the phone. And she likewise came up to me and was excited to find that there were other narratives on that site, other people talking about many of the same issues that she had been facing. In both of these cases, these were students who felt kind of isolated or marginalized because they didn't feel like they fit in properly. And experiencing these other accounts, people dealing with the same issues, commiserating, offering solutions, it energized them, it encouraged them, it empowered them. It ultimately led them to know that they too were not alone. And so I thought I'd end this talk by recounting my own personal story about why this project's important to me. And it was a couple of years ago, and Cindy and Louie were getting ready to retire, and it was a well-deserved retirement, I guess. They pulled me into a meeting and were saying, well, somebody's got to take this thing over. Are you interested? And to be honest, I was apprehensive at first. It might be more accurate to say I was freaking out, because this is a big project, and it's bigger than anything I've ever taken on. It involves so many moving parts: technical, logistic, dealing with people, grad students and faculty spread all over different institutions. It even involves money, and most of you don't know me, but I should never be allowed to handle money, especially other people's money, especially the state's money. edit that out. But they said, Ben, settle down. We trust you, and you should know that when you take over a project like this, you grow into it. It has a way of changing you. And that's something that absolutely turned out to be true. When I decided to take on the co-directorship along with my colleague, much more capable and confident than I am, Michael Harker down at Georgia State, we discovered that it changes us. In much the same way that people that contribute each individual story changes the project. We became more mindful, more aware of how this project touches people, the value they see in it, and how that value changes depending on how they're using it. Michael and I like to talk and joke and use that National Park Service line about if you go camping, you should leave the place better than when you found it. And that's our goal in life. We want to leave this thing better than we found it. Because ultimately, this will grow beyond us even, and it will take on new value. And so I'd like to close this talk by inviting you, all of you, to consider submitting your own narrative to the DALN. There's the URL there. I like to say that each story we get is a gift of your time and your experience and your humanity. And if we're lucky enough to get those gifts, we will do our best to preserve and share them with the rest of the world. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your stories.